Hello and welcome to Voices of BlueScope, the podcast where we go behind the scenes at BlueScope to meet the people who create strength every day. I'm your host, Martin Feld. Thank you for joining us. Today we're featuring a recording of the Aspire Women's Network panel discussion that was held in front of a live audience of BlueScope people and broadcast online from the Inside Industry Visitor Centre in March 2025. The Aspire Women's Network connects all women and existing women's networks at BlueScope Australian Steel Products, or ASP, with the aim of creating accessible opportunities for development and supporting career growth, aspirations, and confidence. Organised for Inclusion Month at ASP, the panel was hosted by Kylie MacKenzie, General Manager, BlueScope Building Components, as she welcomed 3 BlueScope people to discuss the International Women's Day topic of March Forward. More specifically, the panellists discussed the importance of growing connections and their own perspectives on career development. Let's shift to the recording now, in which Kylie introduces the 3 panellists to the live audience in person and online.
A very warm welcome to those of you who have joined us online, as well as to those of you in the room here with me today at Port Kembla, to today's Aspire Women's Networking event, which will take the shape of a panel discussion with 3 esteemed colleagues across our Australian business who are going to inspire us with their stories and experiences to help shape career development of women across our business. For those of you who have yet to have the pleasure to meet, my name is Kylie MacKenzie. I am our General Manager of BlueScope Building Components, BBC, one of our downstream businesses. I'm also the very proud sponsor of the Aspire Women's Network, and for the trifecta today, I am also your panel host. Whilst this is a virtual event, we all very much are here with our feet firmly planted on this wonderful land that unites us. I am here today at Port Kembla on Darringal land, and I pass on my respects and our respects to elders past, present and those emerging, and also our gratitude for the care that's been taken of this incredible land over millennia. There is an incredible richness to the storytelling, to chronicle events, to chronicle history, to pass wisdom down from generations. And we are taking a humble leaf out of that book today in sharing inspiring stories through the panel discussion. So as we all know, March is BlueScope's Inclusion Month. It's also, of course, International Women's Day at the moment. And so today's panel is very much a nod to the theme of International Women's Day, March Forward, really looking to building momentum and active management of someone's career. I think what you hear, and I've had a discussion with all of the panelists prior to this, but I'm sure the messages that you will take away from this are the importance of building a network and understanding the BlueScope business, the importance of mentoring and purposeful mentoring, curiosity, courage, and really sitting in discomfort and then making choices or not to pursue certain opportunities. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is introduce our panelists and ask them to come up to the stage. So I'm going to start with Corinne Diedericks. Corinne and I work together daily. She is our National Finance Manager in BBC. She joined us 18 months ago and she has really quite significant executive experience in finance and commercial areas across B2B, across B2C, and in a number of different industries, of course, manufacturing and steel most recently, but also FMCG, telecommunications, oil and gas prior. So thank you, Corinne. I'm also going to introduce to you Marijana Upton. So Marijana is in our BlueScope distribution business. She's currently our National Manager of Marketing and Innovation. She came to us 6 years ago, and prior to that had really had this collection of multifunctional experiences culminating in a cross-functional P&L role, and joined us in a P&L role. So she joined us as a Victorian State Manager. I think what distinguishes Marijana is her experience really centred around customer and all of those roles. And lastly, I'd like to introduce Sophie Boss. Now, many of you here today may know Sophie. She comes obviously from Port Kembla. She joined us as a cadet 12 plus years ago. Through that time, she has gained amazing experience both in the technical area, also in people leadership, predominantly in coconut making. And she most recently became our blast furnace operations manager about 6 months ago, Sophie. Excellent. Okay, so please welcome. So I think it might actually be better to hear directly from our panellists a little bit of their career history. I'm going to ask them just to spend 3 or 4 minutes talking about the pivotal points in their career. I'm sure as I ask questions, they'll talk to particular role changeovers or particular points in their career. So I'd really like you, and I'll ask you to start, Corinne, or go down the panel. I'd really like you to just talk about, at a high level, what some of the key roles are that you've had in your career over a few decades now.
Thank you, Kylie. I started my career in financial services, so shortly after finishing my finance degree, I did about a few years in financial services, after which I was keen to learn a bit more and further my education, so I went and did my MBA full-time, after which I moved to the oil industry. I thought to a change in career and moved to BP Southern Africa. I was living in Cape Town back then. I spent a good number of years transitioning various roles from strategy to investment analysts, and one of my most interesting jobs was a very interesting job title as well, was a crude analyst, where I was responsible for the crude oil purchases and hedging against the crude exposure. Then I moved into a retail side, the BP Express, BP Connect, so very wide exposure from the supply and trading of crude all the way to retail with your coffee shops, the Wellbeing Cafe. I moved to Australia after that and moved into Caltex. I decided to stay within the industry. After a few years there, I moved into telco. So always been in those finance type roles, but moved to telco for 11 years. So the bulk of my career had been in the service industry. Some of the pivotal roles after doing a number of years in the consumer side, I moved into wholesale and satellite. Again, that was due to me branching out and sort of volunteering my services to another department. Little did I know that would lead to me building that exposure, that visibility that led me to the next big role, and it was one of a big jump for me, and was very, very appreciative of being given such the opportunity. I then decided, after so many years, different departments within that industry, moved to FMCG. So I moved to Unilever. So moved to a very different making ice cream, and manufacturing was quite an interesting and very steep learning curve, and I really enjoyed every moment of it. After about 6 months there, I thought, having had the breadth in a more center of excellence again in the finance space, I got another big break and was given the opportunity to lead another interesting area, another interesting job title that I had was ice cream finance director, which was really fun, talking about raspberry swirls and just macadamia nuts and mangoes all day. And so after that, it was about a number of years again in the foods and refreshment business. I was fortunate enough to be given the opportunity to work at BlueScope, so been here now nearly 2 years.
Thanks, Corinne. Marijana?
So for those of you that may not know too much about my background, I actually started off in marketing, working for a division of Daimler Chrysler, and really enjoyed my time with that business. Gave me a really good opportunity to learn a lot of those foundational marketing skills. But what I got most out of that role was that realisation that what I was really passionate about was customer experience. And after a couple of years at Daimler, I then transitioned into the telecommunications industry and took on what was back then known as a program manager role. and actually had an incredible opportunity to work on a program of work where we were delivering digital technology and digital access to regional, rural and Aboriginal communities right across Australia. It was also a really special time in my career. It was a time where my family was quite young. I had an incredible opportunity during those 5 years in that not only did I lead the program holistically for a few of those years, but as my family evolved, I was working with a very entrepreneurial and supportive GM who looked at that time and looked at my passion for customer experience, and we decided that we would look to transform and really invigorate the business to really create that uplift and that point of difference. So for 3 of those 5 years working in telecommunications, I used that time to then dive. So believe it or not, I developed an incredibly deep understanding of supply chain. I worked intimately in the operational part of the business. We did a lot of transformation work in warehousing and supply. We did a massive package of work on contractor management and safety, as well as training. And of course, the one thing that I'm incredibly passionate about, and that is technology. And so after that 5-year period, what I realised was that I developed so much experience and so much knowledge that as my family started to grow, it actually gave me a really good opportunity to now start applying for some of those roles that I had aspired to do several years prior. So coming out of telecommunications, I realised that the only thing that was left was the bit right in front of the customer, and an incredibly important part of our organisation, and that's obviously the sales and business development space. So I then went off and worked for an Australian manufacturer, in fact a BlueScope customer and supplier, and worked in national business development and also in sales leadership roles for that 5-year period. Finally, I felt that it was the right time in my life to step into a P&L role, and I spent a couple of years working for an automotive company, and finally made my way to BlueScope. So I joined the business in 2019 as State Manager of the Vintage business for BlueScope Distribution, and then transitioned into a national role looking after marketing and innovation for the last few years. So absolutely delighted to be here and just welcome everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Marijana. Now, we only have 3 microphones, so would you mind passing yours down to Sophie so she can give us a quick introduction as well? Thanks, Sophie.
Okay, thank you. So I guess my career's been a little bit shorter than other 2 guests, but I joined BlueScope in 2013 as part of the materials engineering cadetship route, as many of you will be familiar with. I've always been within coke and iron, started off at coke making at the ripe old age of 17, so it was a very eye-opening experience, but I loved it. I fell in love from the get-go and knew that manufacturing and working in manufacturing was going to be for me in the long term. I started off in a technical cadet role at coke making and learned very quickly that I think I want to be in the action. So I was fortunate enough in my 2nd year to move to ore preparation and have a great operational mentor there, and a lady called Leanne. And I learned a lot about our systems and the beauty of people management and what that could look like. So really from my 2nd year onwards, I was chasing those operational opportunities. In my 3rd year, I ended up at the blast furnace, and well, I haven't really left. I have held a number of different roles within the blast furnace over those years. Started off with an excellent mentor who essentially taught me his role. He didn't believe in cadet jobs for cadets. So I became a mini operations engineer, getting exposure in things like shutdown coordination, in the gas safety space, learning a lot about operational optimization and manufacturing excellence principles. When the opportunity came at the end of that 3rd year to go on shift and learn how to be a systems controller, I could really see the benefits of spending my technical expertise, but getting to know the team at a deeper level. I already knew at some point I wanted to lead a team like the blast furnace operations team. And what better way to understand them than to work alongside them through shift work, through, the challenges that come with 24/7 operation. Shortly after my first stint as a systems controller, I was asked to be part of the PCI, the pulverised coal injection plant transition from BIS back to BlueScope, which was an awesome opportunity. Challenges that I never thought could be possible to work through, but also learnt a lot about a new team, how to transfer systems, and I guess how to develop new systems and new structures within the department. After the transition was complete, worked my way back to the blast furnace. I really couldn't get enough. So again, stepped into an operations engineer type role, doing a lot of shutdown planning, and fortunately at that time someone took a chance on me and created a role for me to stay in the department. We could see a really cool succession plan, and really just leveraged that opportunity. Ended up as the operations engineer and then the blast furnace business engineer up until most recently, where I received my promotion to become the blast furnace ops manager.
Thank you, Sophie. And I thank you now after hearing directly from them, and that's only a really short, sharp description around their career. I think you'll understand why they've been invited to be part of this panel today. I think, and Sophie, you alluded to this, we've intentionally chosen diversity in length of career and types of career, internal, external, the types of businesses they're in now, as well as the types of roles that you've all had. Is the intent of that is we've got a really diverse group of women people, hopefully, listening to this session that will take snippets of insight from what you have to share. Now, I have 100 questions already from what you just shared there, folks. But what I'm going to start with is the theme of International Women's Day. I mentioned before this year's theme is March Forward, and if you think about that, that's all about building and continuing momentum. And if you then take that to career management and career development, it really gives us this thought around active career management rather than passive career management. So the first question I'm going to throw to all of you, please, and we'll start maybe with Marijana this time, is using that theme or extending that theme, how do you think about your own career development?
I think probably the story that I'm going to maybe share is, and I started talking a little bit about it earlier, during that time when I was working in telecommunications and that period in time, early on in my career, where I realised that I really needed to make the most of time and opportunity. As I mentioned, it was a time where I was working on a really significant program of work, and I had a really young family, but I was incredibly passionate. I had huge aspirations. I wanted to really progress my career, and I realised that I needed to do it in a really intentional way. I needed to be really well planned. And so what I decided to do was I had sort of envisaged myself in terms of where I wanted to go and the type of roles that I wanted to hold in the future. And I worked out the type of experience that I needed to build in order to be able to step into those roles. And I realised that I actually had this incredible moment in time where my children were small, I was still working full time, and I needed to build out that experience so that when the time was right and I could step into those larger roles, that I would be ready. And so I looked at my career and that part of the journey almost like a passport. And I realised that just like a passport, I was going to need to connect stamps. I was going to need to collect those stamps for every part of the experience that I needed to build. And so that 5-year period working within that business and really immersing myself and building out and becoming a subject matter expert in so many different areas and really getting that breadth of knowledge and that really deep experience. As I came out of that, I actually, realised that was really well done, and it differentiated me. It made me a step ahead of the rest. And so I guess the advice that I would give everybody, and it doesn't matter what part of your career journey you're in, be intentional. Have a bit of an idea of where you want to go. It may not be 5 years, but you may know what the next role is. Work out what that experience is and then look for those opportunities and work with your leaders to see how you can build up on that experience.
I think that's a really good tip for all of us. That analogy of a passport and a collection of experience is a really powerful one. Sophie, do you have anything to add?
For me, I guess I never had a real, I still don't really have a final job in mind that I want, but I do have a purpose. And my purpose of what I want to achieve and what I want to contribute is really clear. I won't necessarily go into the details of it, but I think having that clear purpose of how you want to contribute to those around you almost sets the goals as you go. I spend a lot of time actively listening to those people around me. I'm not a very talkative person, actually, but the benefit of that has been at each stage, even though I didn't know the answer going in of how I was going to be able to achieve the purpose and what my next career move was, people around me were saying and telling me things that led me to that next move. So I guess, my advice would be to actively listen along the way, because the cues are coming. You don't necessarily need to have the answers.
That's really insightful. I think we'll come to a question later where we dig into that a little bit more. Corinne, what do you have to add?
Very similar themes to Marijana and Sophie's. I found that intentional was certainly something I went by, but in order to be intentional, I needed to define what I was seeking and what got me out of bed in the morning. And in order to define that, I started the journey of trying to define what I did not enjoy. So I started even this blank sheet of paper with a margin right across the page, and defining what on the right-hand side I did not enjoy. And I just went through a whole list, and then I flipped it to the positive. What am I motivated by? What gets me out of bed? And that gave me some key themes to go by. And using those themes, then I started to engage with different people around my network, and started to build this personal board of directors that I kind of leveraged. So picturing a board of directors, having someone who could be my coach, someone who could be even my wellness coach, and someone who could be my cheerleader, and someone who could be, someone I leverage, more with personal decisions. And in terms of defining all these different aspects of the themes, then when opportunities came past, whether I was tapped on the shoulder or I saw something being advertised, I knew exactly that it resonated with me, because I had done the work. I had done the hard yards trying to define, that actually just, resonates and ticks these boxes. So it helped me really progress and be quite specific about my pathway. Although at the beginning, it just felt like, where do I even begin?
It really needs to be said, coming from a finance perspective and almost having a trial ledger there if you're frozen. But it's leveraging what you know to really then determine what your purpose is and where you want to spend your time based on what motivates you and what doesn't. And I think that was a theme from all of you then, because you all talked about the purpose of networking and the purpose of mentoring really. Can you talk to us please about how you identify who the right mentors are for you, and how you've gone about approaching them and then formalising or not that relationship?
Thanks, Kylie. I'll take this one. One of the most important things that we need to wrap our head around is the ability to use the network around us to be resourceful and to be able to call on people to help when we need them. So, in terms of networking, I know that can seem really daunting, and I can't think of anything worse than being put into a room full of strangers, because that's daunting for anyone. But in a practical sense, the way that I like to do it is I like to look at the job that I'm doing, the role that I'm in, and what does it take for me to be successful with what I'm doing. And then I look at who are the people that I'm interacting with on a day-to-day, week-by-week basis that I'm either supporting or that are either supporting me to do that job. And then I make it very intentional. I make it my job to go out there and actually connect with those people, understand what they're working on, what's important to them, what are the challenges that they're experiencing in their roles, how can I help, how can they help me? And so that's that first line of connection that I think everybody right across our organisation, will be able to do. It's also quite easy to connect with people on a common ground, and certainly the roles and the contributions that we're making is definitely that. The second tip that I would give, and I'm incredibly grateful for these people, and that is my peers and my colleagues that are doing roles that are very similar to mine. If you think about the role that you're doing, who is doing a similar role on another shift, in another state, in another part of the business? BlueScope is a global organisation. We have so many resources to be able to draw on. Connecting with those peers and colleagues that are doing the roles that we're doing, and then approaching that with curiosity and asking those similar types of questions. There's so much opportunity for growth and development and sharing, and also to, in terms of getting that support and the help that you need when that time comes. So that is probably the advice that I give.
There's really great humility in that comment, Marijana, because you're right, particularly as you come across more complex problems. No one person alone could solve them, and so the intentional creation of a network in order to help you solve a problem is really quite insightful. Sophie, Marijana's just handed the microphone to you. You've shared how important mentoring has been in your career. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, so I've had both official and unofficial mentors all throughout my cadetship. Often they've been ex-supervisors or ex-managers, peers in other places. And to be honest, the most important decision that I made in my career happened quite early on. I was a second-year cadet, and I was making a decision about whether to transition to my next placement. For those who aren't familiar with the cadetship, you move every 12 months, and generally you're trying to, like a bingo card, get experience in all the departments in your rotation and all the different disciplines, whether that's technical, operations, process. I hadn't ticked off everything on my bingo card, but I could see that there was opportunity within the placement I was currently in. I could see a really clear succession plan for a role that someone was due to retire out of in a few years, a subject matter expert type role. And I, at that time, confided in a mentor to sort of say, oh, gosh, I think there's a really big opportunity here that I could be missing if I was to move on for my rotation. What do you think I should do? And he gave me some really good advice. And he said, really, you need to advocate for yourself at this time. If you can see a really clear business benefit for why you should be doing this, and that aligns with your own personal goal, you really should, even if you are only 20 years old and 3 years into your cadetship, you need to speak up. Talk to your cadet coordinator, talk to your operations manager, put the business case forward and back yourself. And realistically, that was something that I never would have been able to do on my own without, a mentor just reinforcing that this isn't so crazy. What have you got to lose? They might say no. So it's even just as simple as that. An ex-supervisor who was willing to give me, a bit of reality on what, business decisions could be made if you come with the right argument. And for me, that led to eventually a position being created for me as an operations engineer down the road. So it was worth the risk.
Thank you. And it goes to show not only the advice that can come from mentors, but also the validation. Yeah, fantastic, thank you. Now, can you talk a little bit about your board of directors? And you talked about the types of roles that those directors have fulfilled. Can you just share with us a little bit more perhaps about how you've gone about creating those relationships?
Yes, sure. So, like Marijana mentioned as well, sometimes you feel a little bit shy out of your depth and not confident enough. So how I started was also leveraging the connections of my line manager and asking some of your peers, could you put me in touch with so-and-so? And from that, I kind of started almost this daisy chain and asked for, their connections through the conversations that I was having with these people. They would kind of open up another area of business potentially I was interested in and I had questions. And I leveraged those relationships so that they would put me in touch with the next person. And through this referral and recommendation, I got almost fast-tracked, in length, like in terms of meeting with those people. And that kind of helped me build my confidence further, and sort of through this daisy chain then leverage another set of group of people. And then now I'm a lot more, at ease in those big room situations as well, to then enjoy the external networking events and engage with people from different industries. So I try and leverage as well now the industries that you're part of, and for me in finance, do attend some external events. And I do also keep in touch with my previous peers and managers from different organizations, and it is a lot of time investment, but I feel like it's so well worth it. And the regular coffees or just a phone call to just keep those connections, because these people also progress in their careers and put you in touch with their friends and their peers as well. So that's why I call it the daisy chain.
I think that, like the passport, the daisy chain, I think is a daisy chain of contacts is a great piece of advice. You've all talked a little bit about in mentoring and networking. There was an element of discomfort when it first started, and I think I wanted to take that theme of challenging ourselves and your comfort zone, and perhaps stepping out of your comfort zone, and how you've considered that through your career. How important has that been at pivotal moments in your career, Corinne?
So for instance, when I was in the telco business, I was predominantly working within a business unit, a little bit removed from the finance function that I belonged to. And I thought like this was quite daunting, and it was actually just sometimes beyond my comfort zone. And I, acknowledged that and decided I'm going to jump straight in and put my hand up to join and started a DE&I community within the finance function. And that actually propelled me within that finance function and got me greater visibility and exposure within that group. And I then built onto that. So I definitely sort of pushed myself so that I would be a little bit more visible in terms of just building those connections. And that one thing led to another. And then I was asked to then lead certain other auditorium, sort of emceeing certain events and all of that. So one thing then led to the other. So I considered that as putting these little skill sets into my little toolbox, and felt a lot more confident. The next time I had to be asked to join another event, I thought, well, I've done this before, and I know what to leverage, I know what to expect. So I just kind of, back myself and made sure that, I just kept looking after my little toolbox.
Thank you. I'm going to throw now to Sophie. I think you had some good insight in this area when we spoke earlier.
Yeah, for me, being quite an introverted, technical individual, I guess the concept of my career growth and stepping outside my box, really for me was just bringing on a yes, let's just give it a go kind of attitude. I understood that, this was always going to feel uncomfortable, and it's just about working through that discomfort. And what that yes, give it a go looked like for me was, first started after Leadership Essentials, I was asked to give a presentation on our Leading Change project. And to be honest, the thought mortified me. I couldn't think of anything I'd rather do less.
Look at you now.
I know, crazy. I was actually standing right there when I gave the presentation. But what it actually taught me was, because I understood the project so well, I actually wasn't that nervous. And in fact, I was kind of excited to share what I knew, show what I could have achieved, and the skills that I'd learned as part of the project. And I kind of took away from that, hey, we can keep doing this. We can keep saying yes to these speaking opportunities and presentations if we can leverage our comfort area. And for me, that was gas safety, process safety. I managed to give presentations to senior leadership, the board, and talked a lot about process safety on the front line. And just by leveraging my comfort area, I was able to break the ice with people in the business who were key decision makers. And to be honest, I didn't think I was doing anything special, but by having faith in what I knew and what I was good at, and trying something a little bit uncomfortable, I was able to break some of those boundaries, I suppose, and somebody noticed, I guess. Yeah.
And now, just to toot your horn for you, you're the youngest GSL4, which is the highest process safety accreditation. And there's only 17 people in the company, so I think I feel very comfortable with you running our blast furnace. Marijana?
Sophie, I love the way that you put that. I think it's first and foremost, you know yourself, you know the experience that you've had, and the first part is really backing yourself. The second part, Corinne, to your point, is the daisy chain. It's the board of directors, it's the cheerleaders, it's the people that will pull you up and say, hey, you got this, I know you can do that. And then the third part is the jump. It's that resilience to be able to take that step, and it's hard for all of us. But when you can back yourself and you know that you've got that experience and you've worked really, really hard to get that experience, you've got the people that are backing you, it certainly makes it easier. I think also, Kylie, when we're in a state of learning, it is hard. And I think recognising that and knowing that we as leaders of people and as managers across the business, we know when our people have made those big leaps, into the unknown, and we absolutely need to encourage them and motivate them and inspire them to keep doing that. And it can be really daunting. So I think it's really important just to know that it's okay not to have all the answers, and when you're stepping into some of those new roles where you're learning, it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay not to be the SME right from day dot.
I think this has been a really powerful discussion because the three of you up here today look and are so incredibly confident and capable that everybody here in the room and everybody online to hear that there were moments of doubt, or moments at least when you had to step out of your comfort zone and rely on others and seek advice. That's incredibly powerful. So I appreciate your vulnerability in sharing that. Marijana, I have a specific question of you. If the other two would like to jump in, by all means do. But you mentioned a few times earlier when you introduced yourself about having a young family and taking a very intentional approach at that time. And when we look at our diversity snapshot in our business, we have a number of people that have caring responsibilities. Now, those caring responsibilities can take many different shapes. Sometimes it is a young family, which is what I heard you refer to. Sometimes it's broader family members, or it's ageing family. You seem to think differently about your career during that time. Is there anything particular you'd like to share with us for others when they're sharing caring, when they are encountering caring experiences perhaps they might want to consider?
I think it's life, right? I think it's taking a moment to recognise we all have our professional lives and we've all got our personal lives. And at different stages of our journey, we're going to encounter different, scenarios. For me personally, it was a young family. I now have an aging mum, so I know that that's ahead of me. There are family members, there are friends that at different points in time might need our support. So I think it transcends across all roles across our business. Probably the piece of advice that I would give is the power of connection and the power of the relationship that you have with your leader. If I reflect back on when my children were small, I was very fortunate that I had an incredibly supportive entrepreneurial GM. And what was really important at that time was that I was very transparent in terms of what I wanted to do longer term, so the roles that I was aspiring to do in the future. And he took a very vested interest in really understanding really what my capacity was at the time. And together we were very, very open-minded, and we were very creative in terms of really planning out what that period of time looked like. And as I said earlier, for 3 of those 5 years, I did deep immersions into different parts of the business. And yes, in hindsight, I'm so glad that I did that. In the moment, it was incredibly challenging. And I'm so pleased that I did, because it meant that that time was really well spent. It was a time where I felt really great about being a mum and having a young family. I felt really great about progressing my career. And really importantly, I felt amazing because I was making a really meaningful contribution in and developing that real, depth of experience. So I think that piece around being intentional, again, is really important. But certainly for our people leaders, it's about being creative and really being open-minded about what we can do to support people at these, critical points throughout our careers. So, certainly looking outside the box and understanding how we can be creative to bridge that gap and to broaden that experience longer term.
Yeah, that's really, thank you for that. That's really insightful. Look, I spent some time considering whether I should ask that question because we've got predominantly women in the audience here today. You probably wouldn't hear that question if it was predominantly men in the audience, but really referring back to our diversity snapshot, it shows that both genders face caring responsibilities, and I think this is a conversation and a question we should be having as a broad society. So thank you for sharing that, Marijana. We've talked a bit about mentoring, we've talked a bit about networking, we've talked about intent and how you've selected or not certain roles throughout your career. One of the things I'd like to move on to now is your own personal development. So a career can span 40 plus years. Of course you're learning within the role, but what else have you done outside of that to keep yourself current? Marijana, you talked a little bit about technology, your passion for technology. How have you kept yourself current and focused on personal development?
Yeah, I think it's about striving. For me personally, it's about striving to be better, striving for to do an even better job than we're doing. I was about to say excellence, but I think it's important just to recognise that there's an opportunity for improvement, and whether they are really big leaps or whether they are small jumps, utilising that network both within BlueScope and externally, whether it's, Corinne, to your point, peers from other organisations, other networks that you can tap into, understanding what great looks like, and then bringing that back in and really looking at how you can apply that within your own role with the network that's around you.
Thank you. Whilst talking networks, Sophie, when we talked about this earlier, you talked about your intentional approach to filling your knowledge gaps in this space.
Yeah, so I had a really good conversation with my one-up manager a little while ago about where I felt my knowledge deficiencies were, specifically coming from a place where I've been in the one department for a really long time in an operational role. And he sort of said to me, this is a pretty easy one to solve. I've got a pretty big network myself. If you're comfortable, I'm happy to leverage that for you and give you the opportunity to sit down with some people in our business that you wouldn't normally interact with. So I had some really great, almost like a flash networking session with some people in the finance team, in our HR teams, procurement, lots of the functional teams that I otherwise wasn't really, interacting with as part of the day-to-day. And to be honest, I got a lot more out of it than I really thought I would. It kind of forced me out of the departmental day-to-day and forced me to think more strategically. It's very easy to get caught up in your day-to-day problems, but you don't think about what it means for the business as a large. So yeah, that essentially just leveraging the connections of your network to fill some of those knowledge gaps.
Thanks, Sophie. I know personal development's been very important to you. You started off by sharing, you've done your MBA, you've also done the company director's course. You have quite a structured approach to personal development, correct?
Yeah, so I've tried to balance it with a more formal approach. Doing my MBA and for instance also doing a project management TAFE course, just because I felt like being involved in so many projects early on in my career, I wanted to have that formal background. And also from outside of work, looking to broaden my exposure to other areas like the company director's course, to branch out then to extend my services for not-for-profit board positions. And also just for me, applying my time. Time is like the most valuable asset that we all have, and it's constantly depleting. And I always want to be sure that I'm applying the time that I have available, whether it's on the weekend, idle hours. I want to put it to good use. So this year I've committed to read 2 books a month, non-fiction. I'm doing all right and to finish my 4th book on the weekend. So I just committed to myself that I will just further my learning, formal or informal, and it just continued to just feed my mind and broaden my knowledge.
Fantastic, thank you. I heard the bell a moment ago, so what that indicated to me is that it's time to throw open to the audience here and online for questions. I'm going to throw to Anna first, who's monitoring the chat, to see what questions might have come through the chat, and then we'll ask for a volunteer, a roving mic, to ask questions in the room.
Thank you, Kylie. We do have, firstly, a comment online from Mark Smith. Love the modesty of the panel, all referring to being lucky to having opportunities, but it's no secret hard work creates luck. So big shout out to our panel. And a question online from Laura Towie. Question for the panel and Kylie. From your perspective, what's the biggest shift needed to ensure women not only succeed but thrive in our workplace?
Yeah, that's a really fantastic one. And I think if I look to the purpose of this Spy Network, it's about providing accessible development for women in the shaping of their own careers and to build their confidence. So I think it is very much around the connections that we all proactively make in order to seek opportunities, seek to understand things that we've perhaps not been exposed to before, so that we can take that into our own career development and learn from others. And then importantly, I'm not 30 years into my career now. My role now is to help others and lift others. I think that's a really important role that we need to play into our career as well, is inspiring and lifting others to do their best and really build confidence in their own abilities. So I think this Spy purpose has it all, to be frank.
I think for me, we need to own the space, right? So it's no secret that we all work in an industrial space. The numbers are changing. I think it's 25% now. We have female representation across BlueScope, which is incredible, and we've been on this amazing journey over the last couple of years. But really recognising the contribution that we make, the experience that we bring, you know, what we said before in terms of owning that experience, making sure that you're proud of the skills and the stamps that you collected, and really, you know, putting yourself out there and making sure, to Sophie's point, that you're listening out for those cues and you're putting yourself forward for those opportunities. I think that's probably, you know, the greatest piece of advice. There are so many leaders across our business that I know are incredibly passionate about really getting even more females within to their teams. So I think supporting and encouraging each other and knowing that that underlying care and purpose is very deeply entrenched across the business.
We do have one more question online. While I'm reading this out, if anyone has a question in the room, put your hand up. So a question from Louise Mangan. Does Corinne have a reading list she would be willing to share for those of us online?
I certainly do, yes, and I'm happy to share.
Fantastic. Thank you, Corinne.
Hi, I was just wondering what you ladies think personally about what's going on in the world at the moment with DEI.
Another big question.
Look, that is an enormous question and a loaded question. And if I think about what it means for here in Australia, for our business, and I really go back to our bond, and our bond is very much about representing our communities. And I think if we hark back to our values as humans, I personally see an enormous value in diversity, in bringing fantastic ideas to the forefront that wouldn't have been there otherwise, in therefore making the best possible decisions based on the information in front of you. So you asked the question personally, I'm not speaking on behalf of BlueScope here, but personally I certainly go back to the values that are my values, but importantly are the BlueScope values about the importance of diversity and inclusion. I also think as a hiring manager, it is really hard to find talent in our market. For those of you who've recruited for a role recently, you want the best available talent pool to recruit from. And if you don't have diversity of gender, diversity of thought, diversity of experience, diversity of ethnicity, you can't possibly get the best possible talent into your business. Any other questions from the room?
I was just wondering, on those days when you don't have like, the confidence or you're not feeling 100%, what do you do to boost yourself when you're just feeling a little bit low and you're doubting your skills? I'm really curious what you do to build yourself back up.
This might sound kind of counterintuitive, but I embrace the vulnerability. I share it. There's nothing that's a greater equaliser than, sharing what you're feeling really vulnerable about on that day with the people that you need to talk to. There's, I think personally, a lot of great power in that.
The text that I've just recently read, it said something like, pressure is privilege. So it actually helped me reframe sometimes being a little bit anxious or not feeling up to it. And sometimes it's just a lot of pressure coming at you and you're not feeling up for the task. And I now remember and cast my mind back to this sentence of pressure is privilege and you've earned it. And you're in this position because you can. And so that helps me get back up. Yeah.
I think it's also good to note that if you are lacking in confidence at some point, if you're not feeling up to it at some point, there's a level of arrogance that comes with that. So I think it's good to hear, that was great to hear you sharing it. Everybody has those moments. I mean, I always go to coffee first thing in the morning. But importantly, I'm an extrovert, so I surround myself with people and I surround myself with brilliant people. If I look at my lead team, gosh, they're a talented bunch. And it's really important to be able to surround yourself, know what your gaps are. You can't possibly be good at everything. Know who your go-to person is in that instance. If you can surround yourself with those people, whether it's a network, whether it's mentors, whether it's the people you work with, I think you're going to have some fantastic days ahead. Righty-ho, I'm getting the wind-up signal from the corner. It has been a fantastic discussion and I could have asked you each 100 more questions. So fortunately, we have a networking blitz here later today, following this session, but before that we've got some people that are joining us individually online that I just would like to wrap up for. I just wanted to say an enormous thank you to the three of you. Fantastic insight, great authenticity and vulnerability in what you've shared. I have no doubt there are women and men watching today that will take great insight in their own, insight out of what you've shared into the development of their own careers. So an enormous thank you. If we can put our And one last thank you. There's a wonderful group of women who have formed and have organically grown the women's networks around the business. We've got a few of them here today. So we've got Sonia in Olcon, we've got Steph Janoska, who is the inceptor of LIFT. We've got Janice Brody, we've got Anna DeGiorgio, who's been really critical behind the scenes in making Aspire happen. So I wanted to say an enormous thank you to them and before we clap them all out. And for making today happen. Today doesn't happen without a lot of thought and planning. So Anna has crafted the messages, crafted the incredible panel that you've seen in front of you and made today happen. So a big thank you to all of you as well.
We hope that you enjoyed the featured panel recording, and we thank the event participants for their permission to include it in this podcast episode. For more information on what you just heard, as well as Corinne's featured reading list, please make sure to visit the links and show notes in your browser or podcast app. As always, thank you for joining us here at Voices of BlueScope. Until next time.